Starting my recording now. Welcome everyone to this video on Election Insights 2020 from looking at the USA chart and the candidates. This is part 2 of a video series that I, Kaylin Castell and Eric Roth are doing for the Shamanic Astrology Mystery School. I'm the co-founder of the school, Eric's the managing director of the school, and we were having this conversation about the interesting events that are happening in the 2020 election. So what we'll do is we'll just quickly review what we looked at in the last video. And if you missed it, go back and watch it because it's pretty cool.
Yes.
So we looked at how when Venus is a morning star, it tends to favor the incumbent in an election with 2 big exceptions. And we feel like we're kind of in a time where one of those exceptions may be happening again. So we talked about that. We also talked about the historical effect of all the planets moving forward when there's a presidential inauguration. And our current president was inaugurated with all the planets moving forward, and no president has ever served another term. So we go into a little more detail about that. We also talked about the Jupiter-Saturn conjunctions every 20 years and how it's connected to a so-called presidential curse called the Tecumseh curse. We went into detail about that. We talked about the Mercury retrograde station points that are, and the one that's happening, it's going to station direct actually on election day. And then we talked about Vesta, the indicators in past and present election. And so today we're going to talk about the USA chart and the candidate chart, the charts of the candidates. So I'll let Eric take it away and start out with the US chart.
Yeah, so I know that in past, in fact, Daniel Giamaro covered a couple of times in previous videos, the US chart and the natal chart and what cycles are going on. Kaylin, you were also participating in some of that too. But it's always good to kind of keep looking at this. I even did my own video around this a few weeks back, and maybe 10 days ago from the time of this recording. And so it's kind of good to get perspective because a lot keeps shifting and happening and changes occurring in the US and the world, and especially in regards to this election here. So we can see there's a couple of major factors. One is the US is entering a period of what we call the Pluto Return. And this is going to become even more prominent coming up here in, 20, but I think the unofficial start of the Pluto return is 2020.
Yeah,
Pluto
I
got within about 2.5 degrees of the natal Pluto of America's chart. Thank you. Yes, thank you, Kaylin. And of course, Saturn and Jupiter are playing this big role in this period. They're going to be moving into Aquarius in December, so look out for that. But there's a couple other cycles I want to get into, and one is, and this is something I didn't actually label, a Neptune opposition coming up here, Neptune to Neptune. Neptune got to, what did it get to, 21 something degrees this past year?
A second. You can keep talking, and I'll tell you in a minute.
Yeah, so, and then Uranus is squaring the lunar nodes of the United States. It's going to be making one more pass over that territory and through the election period. So we really are in this space of unpredictability and death and rebirth, and just a complete crossroads change for the U.S., where crisis after crisis after crisis is coming up for us to actually, sit down and like this. We can't ignore. This is not a time to ignore and just, skip stones on the water. This is a time for everybody to have to show up here, and like participate in this period. So, Kaylin, what did you find?
So it got to 2058, so almost 21 degrees. Like it was 2 minutes from being 21 degrees.
So next year we'll be in a Neptune opposition.
Yes.
But right now Neptune's actually squaring Mars, the natal Mars position of the U.S. And Mars Gemini, which is imagination, creativity, Peter Pan kind of energy, but also connecting to the masculine and our own creative front. Maybe it's dissolving what no longer is around our identity around the masculine here, and then moving into a space next year where we're, really, having Neptune opposition at the same time as a Pluto return with Jupiter and Saturn on our south node next year. Wow, how many more titanic forces can come in for the U.S. here to actually wake up and be and really smell the specific energy, to taste this energy that we are really needing to change our pattern. Or if we don't, in this example, it's just going to become a little harder, and that there'll be things that will come in, maybe even more dramatic, that will force us to really pay attention in the world, and in this country in particular.
Yes.
Go ahead.
I was just going to say that those factors, but when we look at, I know you're going to talk about this, but the Uranus square to the nodes. So what's the U.S. destiny?
Yes.
Getting this huge dramatic effect from Uranus, who's like, okay, you haven't been living it. Now it's time.
Now it's time.
Now it's time. And when all these other factors kind of come along to help support that. So the big upheaval it's not going to get better in 2021. Sorry to tell you that, people, but if you're living in the US, it's still going to be a crazy year next year.
Yeah, but it'll be different.
It'll be a different crazy.
It won't be the 2020 crazy. It'll be a different kind.
It might be still some pandemic issues going on.
Oh, sure. Yeah.
Yeah.
But I feel like with Jupiter and Saturn moving into Aquarius, we're going to get, there's definitely a different energy that we'll experience, and that may help us break through the craziness that's been going on in 2020, at least to be able to see the larger perspective, and maybe have some, maybe a little bit of clarity. But again, each person's going to have their own personal cycles too, as they move into that space. But yes, this is a recipe for great change. I mean, I can't think of any others.
Right? There is a Uranian statement that says break down to break through. And we've definitely been experiencing that this year.
We have.
And of course, it's going to station direct in January, on like the 14th of January, in a pretty much direct square to the nodal axis of the US chart. So we've been seeing the breakdown, so there can be a breakthrough, and we just need to keep focusing our awareness and attention on the breakthrough and not get stuck in the breakdown.
Right. And what's interesting, the moon on election day, the moon will be in Gemini. Venus will be in Libra. And we have, of course, the 3 planets here within about 5 degrees, just inside 5 degrees of each other. Sun is always in Scorpio at election time. That's just the way it is. But we've got Mercury in Libra squaring Saturn and Pluto and Jupiter here. That's part of the something we talked about in the first video. That I look at Libra as and maybe I don't mean to make Libra just only positive here, but perhaps it helps truly maybe at least bring some semblance of balance and collective energy to actually work together, to maybe see some kind of connection, like, oh, we got to really, in order for us to really move forward, we got to work together. And I think about I did a reading for a client a few weeks ago, and she talked about a particular African proverb, and Kaylin, you may have heard this one, but the proverb goes, and again, I don't know what specific region of Africa it comes from, but it goes that, if you want to go fast, go solo. If you want to go far, go together.
I have heard that one. Yeah.
Okay.
That's beautiful. Yeah.
And so
that's so Libra.
That's so absolutely, it is Libra. And maybe, just maybe, Capricorn needs that additional Libra to come in and maybe be able to work together. Maybe that will help us recognize the divisiveness around us, and maybe in a way that we hadn't before, and how unhealthy it is now. Maybe when it lasts as long as it does, as it has over these last few years, maybe now's that time where we can actually start to actually have decent conversations without pointing fingers all the time.
Right. And really start learning how to listen to each other, because communication
Yes.
isn't just talking, it's also listening. And I think Libra would like that balance, because all we hear right now is the noise and people pointing fingers and accusing, and this side's wrong and this side's wrong and everybody's wrong. But I'm right, but you're wrong. That is just not helpful.
No, it's interesting is that Uranus is going to be just past its opposition with the sun at that
Yes,
time too. So that Uranian energy will be very strong in the field, if you will,
yes.
Scorpio Taurus.
Yes, yeah.
So
So people, if you need to see it, here's Uranus at 8 Taurus, and on the election day, the sun will be at 11 Scorpio. So still within a few degrees, they're pretty close. And so yeah, definitely that is another energy that is maybe going to mean that things aren't going to go the way that they normally do.
right, right, and we can see, just like, I mean, we can keep looking at this chart, and we see Mars, Chiron in square to the natal U.S. Cancer planets here, and then we see Venus in nearing its opposition point with Mars in the sky, and connected to the Libra Saturn of the U.S. And then we see, of course, all the Capricorn stuff in opposition. So this is it's really powerful, juicy stuff. This is these four signs: Aries, Libra, Cancer, and Capricorn are what traditional astrology calls cardinal signs. In shamanic astrology, we call them householder or culture bearer, and they're kind of the anchors to civilization, if you will. And they're all being strongly impacted right now, especially during the election period. So that course is going to have major ramifications for many, many years to come, probably
Yes.
decades to come
Yes.
after 2020.
And just one more little quick thing before we move on to the candidate charts, and that is
Yes.
that the North Node is
Hmm.
pretty much right on Mars at the time,
Yep.
and the South Node is coming to the ascendant, and the North Node is coming to the descendant, and this is something that only happens every 19 years, 18 and a half, whatever. But it is an intention to realign with the destiny, and one of the things that has been the challenge of the U.S. is that our Constitution has never, the preamble, we the people of the United States of America, in order to form a more perfect union, blah, 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 right? So justice and taking care of people into the future and all of the things that it says in that Constitution has never fully been honored. It's been more about taking care of the elite few rather than all of the people. And
Yeah.
so hopefully this realignment, and with the Pluto return, the Uranus square the nodes, with the natal nodes, and with the nodes coming to the ascendant descendant, and with Jupiter and Saturn on the south node, maybe if we are putting our attention on having this be fulfilled, finally, we have the tools from the great above to help us in the great below to do that.
Yes.
Beautiful.
Yeah. General election night, USA. So this is just what the night sky is gonna, what you'll see in the night sky here. There's a couple of things that I've highlighted that are not actually visible, like Pluto, Ceres, and Neptune. But I put them in there just so a person watching this could know where to look if they were to look for them in the sky, that they can kind of point their eyes in that direction. But Mars will be still very, very bright at that time, and Jupiter and Saturn will be a lot closer together. Wow, we've got some.
So great to see. So if you get a chance, and go say a prayer.
Yes.
for what's highest and best for everyone, not just a few. That would
Right.
be my prayer. What's highest and best for our country, for this country, and because this country is such an influence on the greater global collective, for the, so if this country can get in alignment with what it's supposed to be doing from a place of greater kindness, caring, compassion, and justice, then that will influence the whole entire planet.
Yeah, and it's interesting, Fomalhaut, and I've been watching Fomalhaut. It's one of the royal stars, and we see Ceres right next to it. It's a really powerful ancient recognized stars that kind of connects us to the south, at least in current times right now, connects us to the south and the southern fish, and where the waters, the cosmic waters of knowledge and wisdom are dropping from the water bearer into the mouth of the southern fish there, where Fomalhaut is located. So maybe being highlighted and this time with the way the planets are. I mean, Fomalhaut kind of sits right in the middle of where Capricorn and where Mars is at that time. So we can maybe be able to really connect with that knowledge and open up our hearts, open up our having empathy and compassion, and saying, hey, we can, let's work through, instead of fighting against or through violence. Let's do it from a place of heart, where we can mourn for what we've lost, but also open up to the potential heart of the earth and each other in ways we haven't done in the past. So
Yes.
I love what Fomalhaut, the gifts of Fomalhaut. Of course, that's where my natal moon was.
Right.
I was right where Fomalhaut is. So I have a certain bias of
right. Beautiful.
It's about 4 degrees, roughly 4 degrees Pisces. If anyone's counting here. Okay, Donald Trump. So I did a video about the election, and of course I was part of the a couple of videos that Daniel and Kaylin did. Daniel, I think Kaylin, were you on the one with the summer solstice?
No,
June solstice one. Okay, so he's talked about the election at the equinox time recently, but also at the solstice, and I certainly we brought up some of this information here. But what's interesting about Trump's chart, and weren't going to really spend a half an hour on this. I mean, we could, but it's
video, but just a quick look.
Right. So nodal return. It's beginning.
So
it has
north node coming up to his north node, and here's the south node coming up to his south node.
Right. Now, for those of you that are wondering what a nodal return is, this is a time we get those every 19 years. And at the end of that nodal return, we have what is called a metonic return. So that happens, every 19 years there. And so we get that where the sun moon aspect is the same as it was on our birthday, on our solar return, which is roughly on our birthday. For Donald Trump, this is, of course, the start of it is where the nodes come in. And so of course, that outer wheel shows October 3rd, not November 3rd, but that's okay. We know that the nodes are going to be closer, much closer at that time. So normally a nodal return is a magical synchronous time of expansion, of connecting with vision, our original vision, and our soul's growth. It could be a really powerful, amazing time, very much like a super Jupiter cycle, if you will, a Jupiter return cycle. But at the same time that he's got that, he's got some heavy duty cycles. Yeah, Neptune being one of them, but also Pluto in opposition to Saturn and Venus. And then Pluto, and then Saturn in opposition to his natal Saturn and Venus as well. So he's in a time, and we can, for those of you who've been following anything, you could see that he's in this expansive, he's moved into this expansive period, but you can see there's this great compression and death rebirth taking place, where he's having trouble adjusting, where things aren't working the way they had in the past. When you have a Pluto cycle, if you think you can navigate your way through with your mind or your voice or whatever,
cut
No,
your way through it.
it's not going to be the same. And so this is where it's truly remarkable that when we compared Biden's chart to Trump's chart, it looked like Trump has kind of an edge, but does he really? I don't really think either one, and as far as cycles go, really have that edge. But Trump has got there's just. I look at this as an astrologer, and I'm like, this probably is not the best time to run for office. But it doesn't mean you can't. And then we've got Mars, of course, adding to this feeling over Saturn and Jupiter squaring it, and it's going to be also opposing his natal Jupiter there too, as it keeps retrograding back, and this by the election time it'll be in the teens.
Yeah, to me, what's really interesting is because I know people would maybe give him an edge because he's in a nodal return, and those are supposed to be like a magical window and amazing things and whatever.
Yep.
But with Neptune square his nodes,
yeah,
it's like, and we see that things are in chaos and confusion, and I mean, it's like I don't think he even knows what he's saying some of the time, and it's so Neptunian. It's just so Neptunian. So it doesn't make anything clear. It makes it just more confused for sure. And so I think that affects his nodal return. I'm just saying.
Yeah, and it's also interesting that he got COVID-19 supposedly from Nikki Haley, who is an advisor on his staff, and she. And we could look at Pluto in opposition to Venus here, and Saturn opposition to Venus, and we have Mars squaring his Venus, and then natally he's got Saturn conjunct Venus. Yeah. So the feminine has been a really powerful element in his own growth through limits and boundaries. Like it has never been. We can see he's never truly been able to work with the feminine in a healthy way.
Well, he was
in his life
rally. He was begging the women to love him. It's like so classic Saturn Venus. Like, oh, please, you just need to love me. I'm great.
That's right. That's right. And we can see that he's operating as if he was living in some other decade in the U.S. in the past. And he's got this, of course, that, as you mentioned about Neptune, it can get a person to this romanticism with something that doesn't exist anymore, and that what did exist was either has dissolved already or is dissolving, and so it can throw up illusions and make him believe that something's there that's not there. It's intended to help him grow through that confusion. I mean, on a spiritual level, to help him grow as a human being, and to be able to see beyond, like, hey, I'm on this spiritual path,
Oh yeah, but I don't think that's true. I think that so it's based on our choices too. So his choices are not really supporting that part of the initiation cycle. So he's having to deal with the harder reality of what it is when you're resisting and when you're not in alignment with what these cycles are intended to bring us. So he's a classic example.
Yeah, and having Mars and ascendant in Leo without any real check and balance there, it's just all about him.
Yeah. And
his his Gemini trickster self with Uranus conjunct it. I mean, that is he's lost in the maze of his own mind, if you will, and his own adoration from his, you might say, core fans or his cult.
Right.
And certainly somebody who has strong Leo can actually, I mean, that can happen. You can get a cult following.
It'd be fun to do in the future. Would be something on cult leaders. Look at that.
Yeah, right? I think of QAnon as a example of Trump's cult, but anyway, we can go to Biden here.
Yeah.
So this is something I found interesting. Again, a kind of a mixed bag with Biden, kind of like Trump, where you have he just entered a Mars return cycle. You know, he's going to be 79 in 2021, and that's the 47 and 79 are the closest Mars returns for a human being. And so what I see in my Mars return, that means that Mars comes back to its original position on the person's solar return or their birthday. So it'll be within just a couple of degrees in Scorpio there next year for him. And that's a powerful time of really, I think at that particular age, one where he really gets into touch with who he is and his service on a personal level. And when I find this, of course, it's in the 12th house and it's in Scorpio. So he's got both the passion and energy and vitality to go for it. But he also, I mean, I look at the 12th house, it does have an effect around the heart, around the dreams, around like kind of more of a celestial version of Scorpio, if you will.
The kinder version of Scorpio.
Yeah, exactly. I thank you for that. And he's a Sagittarius rising, so there is a bit of definitely a dreamer kind of energy there in him. And this is I want to share with you. I know I'm going to talk about these other cycles, but it's something I noticed, and Daniel may or may not agree with me here on this, but that's okay. Is this Chiron North Node right at the top of his chart here? And when I see that in other people's charts, there's a lot of people who end up becoming healers or have some version of being a healer in this world. I'm not saying that Joe Biden's going to be this amazing healer that's going to be a Mother Teresa or something like that. Okay, no, I don't think that. But knowing his history, and he's lost his wife and his son, and he lost, I think, another child as well in past years to a tragic death. That something helped him. These powerful initiations helped him grow. And so while I do feel he's this lifelong politician who certainly bought into a lot of the politics in America, but there is something inside him that I believe is trying to help others out there, that he has a certain ideal out there. And so that's just another perspective that I found in his chart. And when I hear him talk, I sometimes wonder, but I feel like, especially when I compare him to Trump, he's just like night and day, very different human being. He's actually feels like a real human being. Anyway, but he's got a lot of Saturn going on. He's got Neptune conjunct the IC, and even Pluto in opposition to Saturn, and even Uranus. So a lot of all three worlds.
So if you look at the Saturn piece, that could be that he's going to be asked to take a bigger step in responsibility.
Yes.
Being a world leader through being the president of the United States. I don't know. I'm just saying that could be one of the ways that manifests.
That's true. It is. And that's a possibility. But then I see that Neptune conjunct the IC, and it's like, does that mean that where he thinks he's going to live is not the place he's going to live, or where he feels at home is not really his home? And like, it's really like fuzzy right there, but it definitely affects his right livelihood. Like something is going on. Of course, it isn't just Neptune. Obviously, you just mentioned Saturn. So something, the spirit and matter, working with both worlds to find some semblance of harmony there. And
Neptune also, I think, ideally is helping us to learn to trust our knowing when we're tuned into it.
Yeah.
And that's the felt, a felt knowing, not a logical, rational knowing.
Yes.
And it comes from a place of being connected to the heart and compassion. And if we're not, then we're in more confusion and illusion. But being, if he wound up being the president, it is not an easy job, and you have to make hard decisions every day. And so it might be that would be difficult for him. Because he has, maybe because of his compassion, he'd like to take care of everybody, but he can't.
There you go. Yeah, that certainly is a possibility. And now he shares the same rising sign as the U.S. does.
Yes.
which is really interesting. So I don't know if that's necessarily saying, well, that means he's going to be president. Well, not necessarily.
Not
He's going to
necessarily.
be president there, but I do find that based on all the natal chart analysis around the U.S. that you and I have done, and then the previous video, that it's possible he becomes president and then he doesn't finish his term, and
Right.
that something may happen, maybe a health crisis, where Kamala Harris comes in, because and maybe you and I can do this a little, a separate video here, but in my own video, I do talk about Kamala Harris's chart, and even in the equinox chart that Daniel and myself and Mary Kern did, we do talk about Kamala Harris's chart, but she's in a Venus return, in a nodal return at the same time. And and I look at that, she's got no Pluto cycles going on or Neptune going on. And so there is this great, like, you talk about the stars aligning for her. I feel like she's reaching that pinnacle time in her life. And so, but does that mean that she's going to become vice president or even president? I don't know.
Right.
We don't know. But
Maybe it's
there's
something
a
else that we
potential.
haven't thought of, right? That's amazing
Right.
and magical for her. Yeah.
It's possible, absolutely. And so we'll see how this all plays out. But this is pretty amazing. This
Yes.
is really, really incredible stuff.
So this is just some things for you to think about, to ponder, for especially for people who are learning more about how to look at charts and transits and cycles. This can help you with that. It can help us maybe understand a little bit more about what's going on with the candidates. And of course, we'll know more in a couple weeks, like not too long from now, about how this all turns out. So Eric and I are going to consider doing some more videos post-election and so on. So stay tuned. And
Yes.
we're so glad you joined us, and we hope this was helpful and informative.
Yeah, this was awesome to do with you. I'm really looking forward to more.
Thank you, Eric. I loved it too. Bye, everyone.
Yay. Take care, everyone.